What's going on, friends? This is the Year One Wrestling Podcast, the show that dives deep into the early stages and formation of your favorite professional wrestlers, bringing out their struggles, their fears, and most importantly, their most interesting stories. I'm your host, the King of Chaos, Logan Black. Thank you so much for checking us out on whatever platform you enjoy your podcasts. We're all about showing love here, so if you dig what you hear, or if you just feel like being awesome, show some love, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, tell a friend, help us get the word out on the show. Before we get started with anything, I just want to shout out the following people for hopping in on this merch raffle that I'm doing to raise money for the Marsha P. Johnson Institute. So, thank you so much for jumping in to Wrestling Unknown, Pete Zanzone, Dane Forgione, Big Juicy, and Cody Lee, Mimi, and Andrew Gordon. Thank you guys so much. All that money going directly to the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, which is going to benefit black trans women, and y'all are getting some really awesome merch. We're not quite sure yet because it's all in a raffle, but you're going to get some dope stuff, and I cannot wait to get this drawing going at the end of the month. Before we continue here, I'd like to issue a trigger warning to anybody who is sensitive to hearing about assault, sexual assault, verbal assault, violence, or anything of that type. So please, if that kind of thing bothers you as it pertains to the world of professional wrestling, feel free to skip forward to just under 7 minutes into this podcast. This week has, man, I don't really know if there's a whole lot to say about it. I feel like if I sat here and ignored the elephant in the room as it pertains to pro wrestling, then I'd kind of be doing a disservice to anybody listening to this, or just anybody who's ever been a fan of mine. I call myself a loudmouth for a reason. I got a big mouth. I say what's on my mind. I normally don't hold back. So in reality, it'd be stupid of me not to say anything. Speaking out, the hashtag movement that's been going on social media has kind of taken pro wrestling by storm, as it should. Pro wrestling has been an industry within the entertainment industry that has forever had a bit of a tainted reputation in terms of the way that it treats women and minorities and LGBTQ folk. But for this point specifically, we're focusing on a lot of different stories that people are telling about sexual and physical abuse that they have unfortunately felt from people in the professional wrestling business. I've always wanted this podcast to reflect my core values, that being that we are an inclusive space and a safe space for people to come out and say their piece, be completely legit, and be honest with themselves and others. Again, it's why I wanted to do the podcast in the first place, to tell, again, the fears, the stories, everything that goes on, bearing one soul for everybody. I think a lot of our guests have done a fantastic job of doing that, and I, bring this full circle into speaking out, where a lot of people are voicing their experiences, and in a lot of cases, it is just absolutely deplorable to hear some of the things that have gone on, the predatory behavior, people taking advantage, the physical harm being done to other people from seriously prominent names. And I bring up my podcast in relation to that because, again, this is supposed to be a place where people can come and feel comfortable with what they're listening to and who they're listening to. So with that said, as of today, I will be deleting a couple of episodes of this podcast for obvious reasons. I'm not going to go into it at the moment. If you have any questions about why, I am happy to answer those. My DMs are always open on the Year One Pod social media if you have those questions. I don't want to focus too much on my experience through this because I'm not somebody who is a victim. At this point, I think we should all be listening. I will say it has genuinely sucked to see that people that I looked up to and respected in the business have had such awful behaviors, but at the end of the day, fuck them, it's not about them. It's about these victims, these survivors, is really the proper way to put it, and our ability to listen to them, and listen to their stories, and believe them, and understand that this is not a single issue. This is a pattern of behavior from a lot of people that have power in this business. The structure of power in wrestling has always been super mafia-like. I mean, the whole concept of kayfabe and, keeping things in a really tight-knit circle, it certainly played into this, but I think just that idea of the power structure, if you don't do this, you can lose bookings. It's similar in entertainment, man. You see a lot of this stuff with I don't know, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, and I hate to bring up that name because it's unrelated to wrestling, but like it's that power structure. And I think that is what has built onto this and helped create a culture where we've been protecting these people for far too long. And as awful as all of this is, and all the hurt that's going on right now, this is a positive step forward because we are getting rid of that power structure. We are getting rid of the bygone era of wrestling where you just had to take abuse in whatever way, but you had to take abuse on the chin as well. That's how wrestling is. Nah, this generation is not allowing that to happen. And I think that's important. You want to leave anything that you do, you want to leave the world in general better than when you came into it. And if anything, I think a lot of this generation is looking to leave professional wrestling better than they came into it. But in general, like, my heart breaks for so many friends of mine who are survivors, who also looked up to plenty of people in this business, and now we're just we're going to be, I said it earlier on Twitter, we're going to be a bunch of nomads for a while. A lot of us who found comfort in certain people who really had no business giving comfort, or had no business giving mentorship, or had no business in control, we're going to be nomads. But that's okay, because eventually those nomads come together, you form a society, and it's going to be better. So I truly do believe in the young generation of professional wrestling right now, taking the reins from people who never fucking deserved it and being able to make something out of it. It's hard to put together a rally cry in the midst of all this negativity, but truth be told, this is step one into making the business everything that we want it to be. I saw somebody, it tweeted it out, and it's literally the perfect quote, in my opinion, for the situation. I love what professional wrestling is supposed to be, but I hate what it actually is. We need to make pro wrestling what it is that we want it to be. And this is step one. With that said, let's talk about this week's guest, Jocay, who I believe is part of that next generation of leaders in this business. Jocay is somebody, you might know him under a couple of different names. If you're a wrestling fan, you most certainly know him through Twitter, the Gift God. This is the guy who for years has been taking independent wrestling shows, pro wrestling, anything that's out there wrestling related, and turning it into GIF form to make it easily digestible for Twitter. This is something that, you saw on the internet here and there, but there was never really somebody who was known for doing that. And through his hard work and his fandom and his appreciation for wrestling, the dude literally created a job within the business. There are multiple people whose job it is now to go to shows, film them, and as the shows are going on, start putting GIFs on social media. He was the first guy to really be doing that. And it's really dope that he's, a fellow New Yorker, so I was able to, connect with him early on, and he's honestly, and you'll hear it in the interview, legitimately one of the most humble human beings you'll ever come across. All he wants to do is just continue to do good things by wrestling and be a fan. You can't really ask anything better out of somebody, in my opinion. People bring up the word innovator in terms of any type of art, but professional wrestling, it gets thrown around a lot. Tommy Dreamer was the innovator of violence. Canyon was the innovator of offense. Jocay is legitimately an innovator on the production side of wrestling. He's had jobs with just about every major company here in the Northeast, and people have been using his services all over the place to genuinely get the word out on pro wrestling. I personally can give the guy credit for bringing my name and some of my moves and spots into a broader audience. It's always a great feeling when he's either at a show or he's checking out a show, and within a day or two you see spots from that match that you really loved having on, and boom, it's right there on the internet, and people are retweeting it and liking it and leaving comments. He's helped Chris and I name some of our tag moves and combos. Again, Jocay is the absolute man, a wonderful human being, and he was on my short list in the top 5 to get on here because he has a story of a kid who is literally just a fan at home on his computer. And then within a couple of years, the dude is all over the place and being paid to show up at shows and do what he helped to create. So, super, super stoked to have him on. Check it out, Jocay on the Year One Wrestling Podcast. As it stands, we've got... Now, just so I can perfect it, because fucking you got to keep in mind, Puerto Rican, but I'm also half white, and that white is really fucking white. The J is like a Y, like okay, right?
Yeah, it's Jocay.
Okay, perfect. So so
Yeah.
I've been saying it correct. But like,
Yeah.
here's the thing: you run across people and they're like Jocay, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not it, or okay. I've heard okay before, and it's just like whatever. But anyway, Hokai, great to have you on the podcast, man.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
So here's my thing. Like I mentioned this to you before we started chatting in a recording. You're not a wrestler. You've
Nah.
no. Have you ever joined up with a school or taken a bump or anything?
Um, I bumped, but not like in a ring. Like it was more like middle school BS in the yard type
Oh
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
all of
yeah,
us have done that kind of stupidity.
yeah, but not, but by the time I wanted to like actually train to school, it's just injuries from other sports and stuff like that just took its toll, and I just couldn't do it. You know.
What other sports you play?
Oh well, just football, soccer.
Oh
I mean,
shit.
yeah.
Is football as in soccer or American
No,
football and
both,
soccer?
both American football and soccer football.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
So you do have a bit of an athletic background.
Yeah,
Oh,
somewhat.
that's fucking cool, man. I'm stoked to hear that. Because I mean, you'd be surprised. Like, I mean, plenty of the wrestlers we talked to all have like football or wrestling backgrounds, but like, like, oh, like, did you have any? No, I didn't do anything athletic my entire life until I got into wrestling. And then some of these dudes are like, insanely athletic. So it's funny. But anyway, as I was saying, like, you're not a wrestler. You haven't taken bumps. Like, you haven't had that way in. But your story is unique in that you created a job for yourself in the professional wrestling business to the point where companies are hitting you up and hiring you for work,
Yeah.
based around a job you've literally created for yourself. So that's a story that I really want to jump into with you. And then also, chit chat some wrestling because you're always a dude I love talking to at shows.
Likewise, bro. Likewise.
So right off the bat, man, where did your wrestling fandom start out?
So, as corny as it's gonna sound, I was literally born a fan. Cause so I was born in '91, and like prior to that, my father and my brother, God rest his soul, they used to watch a lot of like Saturday Night's Main Event during the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
So they used to also record it. So like by the time I was born, we had like this whole cabin filled with like a bunch of VHS tapes with Saturday Night's Main Event. And like I just remember like me as a toddler sitting with my brother watching those tapes nonstop. So like I think the first match I ever saw was I think it was Warrior versus Rick Rude, the one where Heenan grabbed his feet by the apron.
Oh yeah, was that a Saturday Night's Main Event or was that a pay-per-view?
I think it was a summer. I think it was for SummerSlam. But
Like I'm remembering that finish where he pulls it and Rude, has the pin as Bobby's, dropping at the apron and covered himself.
yeah, but like that whole build up that they actually did during the Saturday night, like they showed it. I think it was after that pay per view or before it as well. But anyway, like that whole thing right there, like that's what like the first thing I saw. And then actually watching a Warrior match for the first time was like, oh shit, this dude is dope. And like I got hooked after that.
Yeah, you and Kip Stevens both have the same, Warrior was your intro to pro wrestling, and that was, started the fandom.
Yeah.
You said you were born in 91. I think like I got a couple years on you, but they had like this Warrior. I don't want to say it's a dress up set, but fuck it, like it's 2020. Dress up set's fine. They had this like dress up set with like a mask and like the tassels and like all that other kind of stuff that like I mean I ran out and bought like the second because I was a huge Warrior fan, but like yeah their merch game was on point at that in that era, especially for kids.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about that, like for me, I never owned any actual wrestling merch till like later in life, like maybe 10 years later. Because even though my dad and my brother were fans of it, my mom hated it. So if I would ask, oh, I want to get this, I want to get that, nah, straight off the bat. And like, and like how Latina mothers are, they're like, nah, if I say no, it's no.
Oh
So,
yeah, man, the chocolate comes out in a bit.
bro, if it's not the conquest, it's the belt or broom or something. But
See, I never my grandmother was never much about the broom. Like I heard a lot about the Sanchez from LAX always talks about the broom, but when you mess up, it was the chancla or the pow pow stick is what we heard, which is kind
Oh
of the
yeah.
broom. Maybe it was the broom. Who knows? I
Yeah.
can't even remember. But Pow Pow Stick, I never forget. So Warrior's your intro into wrestling.
Yeah.
You remain a fan for years. What is it that you start getting more into the internet culture of wrestling?
Probably like I forgot what the exact year was. It was like early 2000s when like TNA popped up, and like you remember when it was like I think their guys were all well not all but most ROH guys at the time when they had
Oh yeah,
Red,
yeah. That
AJ.
was just past when they started. Stopped doing the weekly pay-per-views, right?
Yeah, like when they actually went on TV. I think here at the time was like on Fox Sports Net or something like that. And like I just remember watching guys like Red, Sanjay, Joe, and all these guys, and I was like, yo, these guys are fucking dope. And so like looking them up, I remember just seeing where they worked, like and companies like ROH, JP, CZW, these companies popped up, and that's when I like little by little would look into them and like got hooked on it, just watching their matches from there.
I don't know why I haven't like sat down with you and just been like, all right, man, let's talk about the Northeast Indies from like the early 2000s. Because I swear to you, it comes up on like every interview I do here where I've
Yeah,
got somebody who's of that era or grew up a fan of that. Where we're just like, oh man, because I have so much of that stuff like on DVD. I sold all my VHS tapes, but I've got so much of it on DVD, and like especially this quarantine has had me watching like, fucking all of it. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was a time to be a fan, especially ROH because they at the time were doing something so different than anybody else. So
Hmm.
like they really were the counterculture of wrestling. I would venture to say the ECW of its time.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
So TNA is jumping you into being an internet fan. Where were you active? Because I mean I don't think Twitter was a big thing, especially for wrestling at the time. Was it like message boards?
Nah, not even that. I would just look up videos and that was it. Like I never really did the whole message board thing, honestly.
That's interesting. I mean, I know so many people who were like all about that message board life because it really was like before wrestling Twitter, before
Yeah,
anything like that, you had message boards where like, I mean, people have gotten in trouble now based on the stuff that they've posted on message boards years back, but like
yeah,
that
yeah.
really
People,
was so much of what was going on. Where were you finding these videos? Was like, because again, YouTube wasn't really a source of wrestling up until maybe like, I don't know, 10 years ago?
something like that. I think like maybe mid 2000s or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, were you a LimeWire downloader or a Kazaa downloader?
Oh, I was definitely a LimeWire downloader, but it wasn't really for wrestling. It was just music more, which
Okay.
I so regret. But uh, dude, the amount of computers I broke with LimeWire, Jesus Christ. But nah, like I remember I used to have a friend who was into indie wrestling as well, and he actually had a couple DVDs on him that I would, borrow or whatever, and just check out from there.
That's pretty dope, man. Like that's the intro, the window to that world. What do you
Yeah.
remember? What the first like indie show that you saw live was?
Well, like in person or
Yeah, in person. Like you're young, you're an indie
so
fan, you go to a show. What would you
so
remember? What the first one was?
yeah, the first actual indie show didn't happen until like probably 2015 or 2016. I
Really?
forgot. Yeah, dude, it's tough to go to shows when you're broke and it don't work. Like you go to school, but like you don't. There's no money. Like it's tough. So for the most part, at the time, my indie viewing was like just DVDs or video on demand. At the same time, like for years, like I had this where I was like very socially awkward. So like me interacting with so many people, like it was something I didn't want to do at times. So, but like the first show I ever went to, I think it was 2016, was House of Glory Chapter One.
Oh yeah, I mean they you could just take a train over to.
Yeah, and which is funny about that day too, because I think it was like around February or so. I was online on Twitter looking at like flyers and stuff like that that I saw just pop up out of nowhere. There was a Chikara show that day in the Bronx, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to this, even though I didn't know much about them at the time. But then I saw this random ass HOG flyer, and like I remember the card was well, on the card was Sammy Callahan, Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go see this shit instead. So like that was the first indie show that I actually went to.
Yeah, Hawk was running these super shows for like a while.
Yeah.
It was pretty insane because you'd hear about it, you'd see them, and it's like, man, this is like legitimately one of those super shows. And like, if I'm not mistaken, because I know that you have like an in with Hog, they never really push like DVDs or Blu-ray. Like I never see them being sold anywhere.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what the whole thing about that was. I mean, I used to work with them, not anymore. But yeah, that's for another day. But but yeah, I don't know what the whole purpose was. I think originally they were selling a few DVDs, if I remember correctly. Because like I remember I bought a DVD from them. I think it was the one that had Ray versus Red,
Oh man, yeah.
and that was a while back. And then like from there on, like most of their content went to YouTube or Facebook. But and then I think for a good time they even had a Pivot Share account. Like, but then from there on they just stopped uploading. And now like even now I don't know what the deal is with footage for that company. But
Yeah, man, I'm just it's always crazy to me because again, those shows like you just said it, Rey Mysterio versus Amazing Red, which
yeah,
is man, like every wrestling fan from 2001 through to like that
that was the
point,
dream match.
right? And I don't know, I've never seen the footage, I've never seen it advertised, which is insane to me.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. It's just more of me being a fan and getting excited on things. So your first indie show is that one. You start to enjoy things. When do you start up, with gifting things, and like how did you get started with that?
So I think it was 2014. This is when like Twitter implemented GIFs into like everyday usage, and it's kind of weird because like I got into the whole GIF thing from this MMA account. I forgot the name. I think it was called Zombie Prophet. But the guy would do UFC and all these companies, and like I got to the point where it was like, yo, this is dope. It got me into like more MMA. I saw more companies there that I didn't, I had no clue about. So then I got me thinking like, yo, I should do this with wrestling. So I ended up learning how to make a couple GIFs here and there. Then, started off with, your typical like WWE, Japanese wrestling, lucha libre, and then from there on just transition to other stuff. But it's like around 2014 or so.
And I mean, what reason did you feel like? Was it just something like, oh, I'm bored, I'm gonna do this, or
Pretty,
did you have the mission of like, I'm gonna do this thing where I start putting out all this wrestling that the majority of mainstream wrestling fans don't get to see?
nah, honestly, it was just hobby. It was just something to pass time with. You know, because like at the time I was still in school, so go to school and then come home and it's like I got nothing to do. Might as well watch wrestling and do this. So it was just pure hobby.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said from the get, you're somebody who created literally a job for themselves with a hobby, which is
Yeah.
has to be commended. At what point did people start taking like serious? And by people, I don't mean like Twitter users, because wrestling fans are gonna hop on that because it's free content for them to watch and it's like small and easily digestible.
Yeah.
When was it that like guys like Sammy Callahan had taken notice, or guys of that caliber to be like, yo, this kid is doing something really awesome?
I think it was like around 2016 or so. Like, because I remember when I first started doing it, and like especially when I did indie stuff, promoters hated it. They hated me. They used to like threaten me with like trying to take me down and all this other stuff. But around 2016 or so, I remember Sammy did he did a podcast with Cole, and in that podcast he somehow mentioned me and
I
mentioned
remember that.
yeah,
I
he
remember listening.
mentioned. I think you were the one that sent me or you were one of them that sent me like a message like, "Yo, you're on the podcast." I was like, "Wait, what?" But he mentioned me, and then he mentioned the effects of how how it's helping out wrestling or whatever. Even though people were like telling him, "No, it's not helping. It's not doing anything beneficial." But it's like, no, it's bringing people in and yada yada yada. Next thing you know, people started like asking me like, "Yo, can you watch this? Can you watch that? Promote it, etc."
Yeah, I think it shows how short-sighted a lot of wrestling promoters are to really have given you any kind of flack for putting their stuff up. Like, it's one thing if you're trying to monetize on YouTube, like WWE stuff or whatever. But
Yeah.
you're a dude on Twitter who's taking like little clips of like dope spots and making them easily digestible to an audience that probably wouldn't see half. I mean, you were doing indies by that point, right?
At that point, yeah.
Yeah, so like a lot of indies that like the majority of mainstream fans were not going to see to then hop on. It really shows how short-sighted a lot of promoters are when it comes to that stuff. Like I'll never forget trying to talk you up to a promoter that I had the ear of and being like, "Hey man, you should invite this guy down to the show because he's gonna make your stuff like people are gonna see your stuff that normally wouldn't." And I was like, that's $20 if he wants to come. It's like, all right, well, you don't get it. And there's a reason why, some promoters, draw 100 people and, nobody gives a damn about them. At other places, have you leveraged what you do in order to build a bigger audience, which I think is pretty dope. So a lot of these, just random question, have any of these promoters that were shitting on you in the first place, did they then hit you up afterwards to be like, hey man, why don't you join the family? You don't have to name names, but you just maybe give a yes and a bit of a background on it if it happened.
Actually, I haven't contacted those people. I haven't had any contact with them ever since, honestly.
You're using that bitterness of, you gave me shit and now I won't help you.
Well, actually, they never hit me up about anything, so it's like, and the thing is, like, I'm not someone to beg either, so I'm not gonna hit them up either and be like, yeah, so, can I do this? Can I do that? Like, nah. So, but yeah, no, I never.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's pretty dope to see how something, and again, this is something that nobody else was really doing and putting together, and you again created this job for yourself. And before I get into you actually turning this into a job of wrestling, just pointing out the fact that like I wouldn't call people copycats because I feel like I don't know, that's a bit douchey to do. Yeah. But there are plenty of other people who are now kind of taking what it is that you were doing and putting their own little spin on it and doing it for their own local promotions. And I think it's great. Like you were the trendsetter of it. Yeah. To be able to put all that stuff out. Like off the bat, I'll say like, because I'm buddies with them, Wrestling with Unicorns. I don't know. Do you have any beef with them? Do I gotta edit this out?
That's my boy, man. I love Martin.
Yeah. No, those guys are great, and like, fucking, they're doing something very similar, but out in the Midwest because you're a Northeast guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really, it does nothing but help wrestling because a lot of those clips and a lot of those, specifically the wrestlers, like. Yeah. Seeing those guys being like, oh, that's really dope. And then you come across these shows like, hey, man, like that, Flippy Doo spot was pretty cool. And, right off the bat, your buddies, could you put them over?
I mean, at the end of the day, as long as it's helping the business, it's helping the boys, like the more the merrier, like.
I agree with you. There's enough pie for everybody.
Yeah, my thing is like I want everyone to eat. I want everyone to be successful, I want wrestling to grow.
Yeah, see, you and me, man, we're kindred spirits like that. We're on the happy bus, as Kip Stevens likes to say. We're riding the happy bus. So now these people are hitting you up. You're getting promoters going. How long did it take between when Sammy threw your name out on that podcast and like promoters were starting to like really bring you into shows? Because I'll be honest, like personally, seeing you at a lot more shows after that, like that's how I saw it. Just like, damn, he's at like every show over here, and it's because promoters were hitting you up, correct?
Yeah. I forgot when that podcast had aired, but the funny thing is, like, the whole thing with Sammy was the one that brought me in, technically.
For Revolver?
Nah, this is when he took the book.
Oh, right. I completely blanked on that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so the funny thing was I actually went to the anniversary show back in like February 2017. And I actually met DJ that day. So the funny thing is I actually spoke to DJ a few months prior, but we didn't really get to any full detail or whatever, just, he was like interested in doing something, but just didn't know what. And then like I go to that anniversary show, I meet him, and off the bat, he's like the dude gives me a hug. He's like, hey man, nice to meet you and everything. And then all of a sudden just, yeah, you want to come work with us? And I'm like, I'm thinking it's a rib. So I'm like just playing along, like, yeah, sure. Then he comes out with the business card, tells me to call him like later in the week, and that was that. So then I do, But like I remember when I called him, this dude was dying on the phone. Like he could not talk at all. So he was like, I'll talk to you in a few days, when I get better. I'm like, fine. After that, I haven't heard from him in a month. So I ended up talking to Sammy a few days later, and he was like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." I'm like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, all right, man, whatever. And then like I remember for that show in March, I think it was March 11th, 2017. EYFBO was booked on that, so I hit up Drastic and Ortiz, and we ended up going to the show. And then TJ's like, "Yeah, Sammy wants to talk to you." And Sammy was like, "Yeah, so I'm doing something here right now, booking wise. Um, Obviously, you're someone who loves wrestling. I feel like you might want to do something in wrestling, so I want you on my team." And right off the bat, that's how it all started.
And that's pretty surreal.
Yeah. And like, dude tells me right off the bat, he's like, "Yeah, I just want you ringside, take your phone and film it and clip it and put it up on whatever you think is good." And I'm like, "All right, that sounds easy. No big deal, no problem." And like at that moment, it didn't hit me like what happened till like maybe a few hours later. Cause like when he told me this, we're at the skate zone. There was nobody there. There was no crowd yet. It was pretty empty, and like I'm just like taking it all in, right? So then, as the show started, that's when it hit me, and like nerves fucking came out of nowhere. Where like I'm in a room filled with hundreds of people, and this is like when the crowds there were still rowdy as fuck. So I'm doing what they wanted me to do. I go ringside, and all of a sudden I pull out my phone, I kneel down, and I'm getting yelled at by fans. Because like you said, this wasn't something you saw beforehand. Like back like 4 or 5 years ago, you didn't see people ringside with filming with a phone or whatever. Usually, I remember going to shows and like guys like Mike Law had a gimmick where he would point people out on their phones and be like, put it away or something like that. But like, yeah, I got fans screaming like, "Put your phone away. If I can't film, you can't either." That type of shit. Like, just giving me nonstop shit. But and that's when it hit me. I was like, "Oh man, this is legit happening now." But,
yeah, the game is changing right now. Like
yeah.
you are out there changing the game physically. That's fucking so funny to hear. That's really dope though, because like again, nobody was prepared for that shit, not even the fans. And then here you are, just literally stepping in front of them to change shit up.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
That's fucking funny. I'm trying to regroup myself now. Jeez. So at this point, when did you start like going on road trips with people to go do shows like outside of the Northeast, or even like just outside of like the New York, New Jersey area?
So I think first show out of New York, New Jersey wasn't until like a year later, maybe. Because like 2017, I did a couple local stuff, in New York, New Jersey, but then it didn't really the longer trips didn't hit to like maybe 2018, I think, when I think I was with Evolve at the time, and we went to like Boston or I forgot where else, but it was like a year later when I started branching out a bit. But the more I think would be last year when I started hitting up like the Philly area, and then of course this year with DC with PTPW.
Yeah, it was really awesome to see you out there for that shit. That was so cool.
I love that place so much, man.
Dude, it's I cannot wait till all of this craziness passes and they continue running, because they are going to like they're gonna stomp all over, and like in a good way. They're not gonna crush everything around them, but they're going to stomp on it and like create wrestling in like their own image in that area, and it's so cool.
Yeah, dude, that whole Grapple area of DC, Maryland, there's a lot of things special coming up out of there, whether it's PCPW or I forgot the name of the other company, but it's the company where like Trish Adora is the champion at. I think it's.
I'm aware of the company. Can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Yeah, I just can't remember the actual name, but like there's so many good things coming out of that area that I just can't wait.
Right, it's after a while we saw like a number of years back the Midwest, Ohio and like Chicago was like, oh, that's gonna be that's the hotbed of wrestling. And I mean, not that it's not killing it still right now, but like every number of years you start to see like new things pop up and be like, oh, we got to put our eyes on that. And it was New England and then the Midwest, and like now I'm with you. I think there's so many insanely talented people in that area. Trisha, I put her over every fucking place that I can because every time I see her, it's not even that she's great. Every time I see her, she's improved. Like, you
Yeah.
can see improvement.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So you're making. Let's jump back into, because you mentioned working for Evolve, and to be completely frank, Evolve is. I don't even know if I consider them an indie, but they're like, if they were considered an indie.
Well, maybe when I was there, when at the time they were still
right. So they're the number one indie in the United States. There's nobody that's going to deny that.
Yeah.
So now the number one indie in the U.S. has hit you up for work. What's going on in your head?
Well, dude, that was even a weird moment because I remember I woke up that day and like you know how New York City trains are, they're a mess.
Of course.
So like I'm looking at the schedule like, oh yeah, it's gonna be delayed. So I'm like, you know what, let me leave early, just whatever. If I show up in Queens too early, whatever, I'll go grab something to eat or whatever. If not, then I'll just hang out. As I'm going over there, I'm like around 7th Avenue waiting to take the E train to go to Queens, and my boy hits me up. One of my boys who used to work there. And he was like, yo, how far are you away from the build Laboon? I'm like, maybe 30 minutes away or so. Why? He's like, yeah, Gabe wants to talk to you. I was like, okay. Okay.
So this wasn't set up prior. This was literally off the cuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. And then when I get there, like we're talking about, he's like, yeah, so, I explain to him what I do. Because obviously, it's like I've had moments where promoters would hit me up and then they'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, just come on down and we'll figure it out. And then when I show up and they'd be like, oh, it's just a phone. That's it. Like, like they like the communication wasn't fully there. But now with him, I explained to him everything. He's like, all right, cool. Yeah, we definitely want you to do that. And, ended up doing it with them for like a year and a half or so.
Yeah, I think I ran into you over there having done one of those full show pre-shows that Evolve used to have, quite a bit in that era, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I remember.
It's ridiculousness. Fuck it, let's just continue talking wrestling, and then I'll get into all the inspirational shit at the end. So, I mean, at this point, you're going to shows left and right, and even up to today, what would you say is your favorite match that you've seen live? I know that's got to be like a hard question, but like, one that you were literally there at the ring for. What was the best one that you've seen? And what about it made it the best?
Fuck. I'm Jesus Christ. Which one? There's so many of them.
Give a few. Why the hell not? There's no rules here, man. I'm the king of fucking chaos. There's no fucking rules.
Probably the first TOD that I was at, which was the main event. Ricky. RSP, it was Shane Strickland and Gacy, just because like that was my first ever TOD that I ever went to in person. Even as a fan, that was like my first one. And fuck, I'm trying to remember what else. I know like Battle Club, there was a bunch of them as well.
Battle Club for quite some time was just putting on bangers of shows, and then they weren't running as often, which is unfortunate. Like, what was it? Was it the first show they did that had Galloway in the main event?
No, I think that was the second show.
Okay, that was because I was on that show. I don't think I was on their first one, but I was on the second one.
The first one I think was Nice and Bowens.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Two Adonises going fucking buck wild.
Oh yeah. I know at Battle Club, one of my favorite matches, and it's not just because like both women are incredible competitors, but just like the overall environment. So it was Mia Yim versus Tessa Blanchard.
Oh yeah, that was a banger.
And the thing was, it's also because of the fact that you know the Richfield Park building very well.
Of course.
Downstairs how they got that ballroom, which is like locker rooms.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, that room got booked for a quinceañera.
So it was not the first time that happened, because that's happened multiple times, because I don't think I was at that show, but I have been in that building when the same fucking thing has happened. Continue.
Yeah. So they got a quinceañera going on. You got Mia and Tessa just killing and beating the hell out of each other. And like, so there's this point where they go out the ring, they're brawling the crowd. And meanwhile, the floor is like vibrating. And all you hear is like Elvis Crespo playing from downstairs. So like Mia apologizes, Tessa on a chair. Meanwhile, Suavemente is playing. Like it doesn't get more lit than that,
The thing is, I know that people will joke about, oh, when matches happen in the Tokyo Dome, it makes it better. But, like, there really is something about a vibe to the spot that you're in that makes things a whole lot better. And I could imagine, it certainly isn't the ECW arena, but Suavemente being played in the midst of, a damn great technical, wrestling match. Just
it doesn't get more lit than Suavemente, let's be real.
Yeah, no, it's the truth, man. I'm with you on that. Yeah, I mean, I think those two matches definitely. I don't think anyone's gonna dispute that they were probably among the better ones that anybody could come across.
I mean, just overall for me though, like personally, like from what I've seen, I mean, there's a long list, but like we'll be here all night if I got to that point. Like,
yeah, no, I'm sure you've been at like countless shows. So let's really put the focus now onto your role in professional wrestling as it stands right now. Like, has it hit you that you've legitimately, found a place and like you are very much woven into the fabric of not just Northeast Indies, but independent wrestling as a whole? Has that like hit you yet, or are you still just kind of grinding?
I mean, I'm still trying to grind out as much as I can, but it has hit me, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, it is what it is. It makes sense. I don't know.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. Just kind of, you're along for the ride.
Yeah, like I'm just enjoying it until the end.
There's no other way to go about that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we kind of covered it a bit before, but other people who are looking to kind of make their way into professional wrestling on like a production level, which what you're doing is a production level. What advice would you give to them?
I mean, just be you, really. I mean, it's weird because even like going through what I went through, it's still weird because, again, I just showed up to a show 1 minute and like next thing you know, oh yeah, you're hyped. Like all I can say is just be you. If it makes you happy, do it. Obviously, be respectful, of course. Yeah. It's like I don't know, really, honestly. Like I'm still trying to figure stuff out. So
no, I mean that's fair. Like
years too. Like
we're all making our way in this wacky world of wrestling.
Yeah.
Final question for you before we wind down. What is the best advice that you were given from somebody in the business that you respect, and who was it?
Fuck. Never get old, I guess. I don't know.
Never get old?
Yeah.
Nah, listen, there's a lot of truth to that. Who told you that?
A bunch of deathmatch guys. Like, legit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I firmly, like, that's one of the punk rock credos that I fucking live by. Never forget your youth, never get old.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, man. Because, again, what you're doing, you're living through, like, the point in your life where you can kind of, throw a bit of responsibility into the air to go hop in a car and travel, however many miles and however many hours to DC to film some pro wrestling, Yeah. So I completely get that. Okay, where can we find you on social media, even though that's a bit of a redundant question, but go ahead, hype your stuff up.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jocay19. That's Jocay 19. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome, man. Hey, listen, before we get out of here, I'm going to throw that praise at you. There's a reason that you were on my short list of guys that I wanted on this podcast. I've said it like 100 times here, but it's the truth, man. I can't put it out there enough. You are a young man who did what he wanted to do, carved an entire niche out for himself, and made it your own. You are the gift god. There's a reason people call you that, and it's the truth. You created this job for yourself and created this job for professional wrestling. I really feel that, especially within the underground and like the nerdy, true, hardcore pro wrestling fans, you're one of those dudes who's never going to be forgotten. And I think that's dope. And I think you should wear that like a trophy around your neck. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that, man. You already know I appreciate everybody that I encounter with, and thanks for having me, man. I hope this whole thing blows over soon so I can once again be reunited with you guys and, enjoy the good times like always.
Yeah, we need to be throwing a massive wrestle party once this is all done.
Oh, hell yeah. Dude.
Jocay is such an inspiration for any fan out there who's just looking to find a way into professional wrestling. There's not just one way. You don't have to take bumps. You don't even have to be a referee or an announcer or anything. Create your own path. That's about as punk rock as it gets. And thanks to Jocay for joining the show. But before we get out of here, you should go ahead and give us a follow on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at year1pod. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel on your preferred podcasting app and leave a review. Check out the Year One podcast on YouTube for multiple series dropped each week. Shout out to Heroes for the music. You can check them out on Spotify. Shout out to Joanna Robinson for all the artwork and design. Jocay on all social media. Shout out to the Funkenstein Wrestling Superstore for sponsoring the show, located at the Englishtown Flea Market in Englishtown, New Jersey, and on eBay. Make sure to check them out and give their Facebook page a like for all your pro wrestling merch needs. That'll be it for this episode of the Year One Wrestling Podcast. I'm Logan Black telling you, be awesome to each other. Peace and love.